Freedom. A word that gleams with promise, doesn't it? A beacon for the weary and a reward for the bold. But what if I told you that for some, freedom is not a virtue but a veil, thin, fragile, and all too easily pierced by the sharp edges of unspoken truths? Today, my friends, we venture into a realm as intricate as it is treacherous, the inner world of the dismissive avoidant, a soul at war with its own need for connection. To understand this, we must first unearth the layers of human attachment. Imagine, if you will, the heart as a great ballroom, its doors flung open in childhood, where trust and safety waltz freely. But for the dismissive avoidant, those doors were shut before the music began. Whether through neglect, overbearing control, or the quiet ache of unmet emotional needs, their ballroom grew cold and empty, and so they learned not to seek the dance but to revel in the stillness of solitude, a fortress of independence where vulnerability is the enemy and self-sufficiency reigns supreme. The breakup, the illusion of relief. Now picture this fortress under siege. A relationship, after all, is a relentless assault on independence, demanding compromise, intimacy, and trust. When the dismissive avoidant ends such a bond, their first reaction is often one of relief. Like a prisoner suddenly pardoned, they feel unburdened, weightless, free. They may liken it to quitting a job that had grown stifling, or escaping a storm they believed would never end. But here's the twist. This freedom is but an illusion, a fleeting respite before the echoes of what they've lost begin to stir. In these early days, they bask in their reclaimed independence, immersing themselves in pursuits that reaffirm their self-reliance. Hobbies are reignited, social circles reshuffled, and the past is neatly folded into a box labeled closed. They are the quintessential escape artists, deftly evading the specter of regret. But my dear friends, even the most accomplished escape artist cannot outrun their shadow. The justification, a symphony of denial. Let us not underestimate the mind's capacity for rationalization. For the dismissive avoidant, denial becomes their steadfast ally. They construct narratives to justify the breakup, painting themselves as the wounded party or the pragmatic realist. It was doomed from the start, they might say. We were simply too different. These declarations are not born of malice but of necessity, for to confront their own emotional shortcomings would be to stare into an abyss they have long avoided. I recall a tale. A man, let us call him Henry. After ending a 2-year relationship, Henry declared with unshakable certainty that his partner was too needy. Yet when pressed, his grievances dissolved into vague recollections of minor disputes and perceived slights. The truth, hidden even from himself, was that her vulnerability had triggered his own deeply buried fears of dependence. And so, he walked away, convinced of his righteousness, even as the cracks in his armor began to show. The longing for independence, a mirage in the desert. Now we arrive at the phase where the dismissive avoidant becomes a mirage unto themselves. They revel in their newfound freedom, perhaps embarking on adventures or embracing new relationships. To the outside world, they appear invincible, unaffected, even thriving. But appearances, as we know, can be deceiving. Beneath this facade lies a heart still tethered to the past, haunted by memories that surface in quiet moments. Consider for a moment the image of a traveler lost in the desert. They press onward, confident in their direction, only to discover that the oasis they sought was a mirage. The dismissive avoidant is that traveler, chasing independence as though it were a cure, only to find that their thirst for connection remains unquenched. The return of nostalgia, a silent reckoning. Nostalgia, a cruel yet tender mistress. It creeps in unbidden, tugging at the edges of memory with whispers of what was and what could have been. For the dismissive avoidant, these moments are both a torment and a revelation. A song on the radio, a familiar scent, a photograph stumbled upon. They are transported back to the relationship they believed they had left behind. But what do they do with this longing? Here, the dismissive avoidant reveals their true paradox, their ability to compartmentalize. These emotions are neatly boxed away, tucked into the farthest recesses of their mind. Not now, they tell themselves, not ever. Yet the box grows heavier with each passing day, and the weight of suppressed emotion begins to seep into their carefully constructed independence. The mirror of self-blame, a distorted reflection. So now comes a pivotal juncture where some dismissive avoidants turn inward, grappling not with self-reflection, but with self-blame. But do not mistake one for the other. Self-reflection is a lantern that illuminates the darkest corners of the soul, while self-blame is a shadow that obscures the truth. The avoidant whispers to themselves, "Perhaps I was too cold, too distant, too flawed to make it work." This, of course, is a cunning deception. For while self-blame masquerades as accountability, it is merely another form of avoidance, a way to shield themselves from the deeper work of confronting their emotional wounds. It is easier, after all, to label oneself as broken than to piece together the fragments of a fractured heart. The reckoning, a glimmer of self-awareness. For those dismissive avoidants who dare to venture further, who summon the courage to confront their attachment patterns, there lies the possibility of genuine self-awareness. This is the moment when the mask slips, and they see themselves not as the stoic island they once believed, but as a human being shaped by their past, their fears, and their longing for connection. I must confess, these moments are rare, for they demand a vulnerability that the avoidant has spent a lifetime avoiding. Yet, when they do occur, they are transformative. The avoidant may come to understand the impact of their actions, the pain they caused their partner, and the barriers they erected around their own heart. And with this understanding comes the potential for change, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet, steady work of self-compassion and growth. The nudge, testing the waters of reconnection. And now we arrive at the final act, where the avoidant, having wrestled with their inner turmoil, may seek to reconnect. But do not expect declarations of love or apologies etched in stone. No, the avoidance approach is far subtler. A tentative message, a shared meme, a casual, "How have you been?" These are not mere pleasantries. They are breadcrumbs, scattered to test the waters of possibility. For the partner on the receiving end, this moment is fraught with uncertainty. Is this a bid for reconnection, or a fleeting gesture born of boredom or guilt? The answer, my dear friends, lies not in their words but in your own heart. Do you wish to reopen the door, knowing the risks it entails? Or do you choose to walk away, carrying with you the lessons of the past? The mask of independence, a double-edged sword. The mask of independence, a thing of beauty, is it not? Polished to a fine sheen, it reflects an image of strength, self-sufficiency, and resilience. But like all masks, it hides as much as it reveals. The avoidant wears this mask not out of malice, but out of necessity, for they have learned, often through painful experience, that vulnerability is a dangerous thing. Let me share a story. A woman, let's call her Rachel, was once the life of every room she entered, independent, self-reliant, unflappable. She had a way of disarming others with her charm while keeping them at a distance. Her friends admired her strength, her ability to weather life's storms without complaint. But behind closed doors, Rachel's life was a quiet cacophony of suppressed emotions and unspoken fears. She had mastered the art of being alone without ever mastering the art of being lonely. The mask, you see, is not without its cost. It shields the avoidant from pain, yes, but it also denies them the joy of authentic connection. The very thing they fear, intimacy, vulnerability, the unpredictable messiness of love, is the thing they most desperately crave. And so they walk a tightrope, balancing the need for connection with the fear of it, never daring to look down. Nostalgia, the ghosts of love's past. Nostalgia, my dear friends, is a trickster. It dresses the past in golden hues, smoothing over the rough edges, softening the sharp corners. For the dismissive avoidant, nostalgia is both a balm and a burden. It creeps in during unguarded moments, a quiet evening, a familiar song, the scent of rain on warm pavement, and stirs feelings they thought long buried. But what does one do with nostalgia? For the avoidant, it is a ghost they cannot quite banish but dare not confront. They compartmentalize, pushing these feelings into the recesses of their mind, where they can be safely ignored. Yet, as any good ghost story will tell you, the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. Consider a man. Let's call him Charles, who finds himself suddenly recalling the laughter of an old partner, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of her dreams. He smiles at the memory, then shakes it off, telling himself it's nothing, just a passing thought. But the thought lingers, and with it comes a pang of longing he cannot quite name. Charles may not act on this longing, but it leaves its mark, a quiet reminder of what was lost and what might have been. The complexity of self-blame. Now let us delve deeper into the peculiar dance of self-blame. At first glance, it appears noble, even virtuous, a willingness to take responsibility for one's actions. But let us not be deceived. Self-blame for the avoidant is not a pathway to growth, but a detour around it. Why? Because self-blame is safe. It allows the avoidant to maintain a sense of control, even as they acknowledge their flaws. It's my fault, they tell themselves. I'm just not good at relationships. I'm too damaged. These statements, while appearing reflective, serve to reinforce their avoidance of deeper truths. For to truly reflect would mean confronting not only their actions but also their fears, their wounds, their patterns of behavior that keep them locked in a cycle of isolation. Let me offer an analogy. Imagine a house with a cracked foundation. The homeowner, instead of addressing the underlying issue, focuses on repainting the walls, replacing the curtains, rearranging the furniture. The house looks fine from the outside, but the cracks remain, growing wider with each passing year. Self-blame is the repainting of walls, a surface-level solution that does nothing to address the deeper structural issues. Moments of clarity, the turning point. For those avoidants who summon the courage to look inward, a remarkable transformation becomes possible. These moments of clarity are rare, yes, but they are also profound. In these moments, the avoidant sees themselves not as the stoic, untouchable figure they have long imagined, but as a deeply human, deeply vulnerable being shaped by their past. I knew a man once, let us call him Victor, who spent years avoiding intimacy, convinced he was better off alone. But one day, after a particularly jarring breakup, he found himself sitting alone in his apartment, staring at the empty space where his partner's belongings once were. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his loneliness, the ache of his unspoken fears. It was not an easy moment, nor a pleasant one, but it was a turning point. Victor began to seek therapy, to explore the roots of his avoidance, to dismantle the walls he had spent a lifetime building. This, my friends, is the power of self-awareness. It is not a cure-all, nor does it erase the past, but it is a beginning, a step toward authenticity, toward connection, toward healing. The return, testing the waters, no. And now, we come to the moment many of you have been waiting for, the avoidance tentative return. It begins not with grand gestures, but with subtle nudges. A text, a meme, a comment on social media. These are not casual acts. They are calculated risks, designed to gauge the temperature of the waters without diving in. For the partner on the receiving end, this can be a bewildering experience. What do these gestures mean? Are they an olive branch, a plea for reconciliation, or merely a sign of boredom? The answer, as always, lies in the context and in your own heart. Do you wish to re-engage knowing the complexities of the avoidance journey? Or do you choose to close the door, carrying forward the lessons you've learned? The choice, reconnection or release. Ultimately, the decision to reconnect or move on is yours and yours alone. There is no right or wrong answer, no universal blueprint for what comes next. What matters is that you choose from a place of clarity, self-respect, and understanding. For some, reconnection may offer a chance for growth, for healing, for a deeper and more authentic relationship. For others, it may be a door best left closed, a chapter that has served its purpose and must now give way to new beginnings. The wisdom of the journey. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter. The story of the dismissive avoidant is not merely a tale of avoidance and detachment. It is a mirror held up to our own fears, our own vulnerabilities, our own capacity for connection. It challenges us to confront not only the avoidance journey, but our own. What do we seek in love? What do we fear? What walls have we built, and what bridges are we willing to cross? These are the questions that define not only our relationships with others, but also our relationship with ourselves. And so, my dear friends, as you navigate the labyrinth of love, may you carry with you the wisdom of this journey. May you find the courage to face your fears, the strength to honor your boundaries, and the grace to choose love, not the fleeting, conditional love of avoidance, but the enduring, transformative love that begins within. For in the end, it is not the avoidance journey that defines you, but your own. Choose well, choose wisely, choose you.